Want you all to know the most important thing as a brand new agent is learn how to read a contract now before you have to write a contract. Because most likely you will have a first-time buyer. And a first-time buyer will need to be handheld through the whole process where before they sign, don't just say, here it is, sign, don't worry, it's all there, it's all good. You're not being a good agent. You need to be able to go with a first-time buyer page by page, paragraph by paragraph, and spend 90 minutes and tell them exactly what everything is in this contract. If you do that, you will probably end up with a client who will refer you business. And who knows buyers? Other buyers. Your first-time buyers go to parties, they go to events, and all they're going to talk about is they're buying a house. Because that's their whole focus. And other people at those parties will speak up. Oh, I was thinking of buying, or I am buying. But by the way, your agent sounds amazing. My agent doesn't explain anything. Blah, blah, blah. And so they might fire their agent and come to you. So I did that when I first started my business. I went out, I learned the main forms I needed. I asked questions what it means, so that when I wrote my first contract, I actually sat there like I knew what I was doing. And, you know, I was scared because I was like, all this responsibility, but I at least explained the contract, and they were really happy, and they're still a client today. So the forms you should learn the first are Form 21, Form 28, 22A, 22D, 22J, 22K, 22T, Form 31, Form 35, Form 35R, and Form 35E. If you get all those forms down first...
22AD.
22AD and 22AA.
Yeah, 22AD and 22AA. If you understand those forms, you are way ahead of most other brand new agents who don't look at forms until they write a contract. And there are videos for each one of those forms that I just told you about on KW Connect that you can watch in the setup for our office. And, you know, just start knocking them out this week. You'll be a lot more informed when you write a contract. All right, so, am I on?
Yeah, you're good.
Oh, okay. So
two people are watching.
Oh, okay. So let's get started. Questions? No. Oh, okay. Anybody have any questions right now? Come on. It's a scary world out there. I can't believe.
Can you repeat those list of forms that you just gave? Because I think I got like half.
Yeah. Absolutely, I can. You want form. Okay, I'm gonna figure out. Oh, here it is. Can you plug that in the back?
Oh, it wasn't. Oh.
Wherever it needs to be. Is that where? Okay, great. Form 21, Form 28, 22A, 22AA, 22AD, 22D, 22K, 22J, 22T, then Form 35, 35R, and 35E. And did I say 22T?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
31 also.
Oh, and Form 31.
Thanks.
Great. All right. Now, who's out there working with buyers? You know, this is your class, and we can talk contracts, but we can talk strategies. We can talk whatever you guys want. I'm here. I'm just here to answer. So, you had your hand up? Yes, you did. You have one question I know somewhere. Nothing?
No, I was resting.
Okay. You're brand new.
I have a question. So
yeah.
I set up an initial buyer consultation for today, and my client is looking for land. I don't know anything about land, but I still set up the appointment just to get to know what he's looking for, and then I can we'll get over any particular legal documents from contracts that
okay. Any buyer?
Question.
What?
Repeat this question.
Oh, what to do if you're seeing your first client and it's a vacant land search and you don't know what to do? Forms, anything, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Well, first thing you do with any buyer is you're going to have your buyer disclosures that you want to get signed when you meet them. There's a video in there on KW Connect on buyer disclosures, what they are. But you want to be, I mean, you are all under law of agency. Agency law says you have to get the law of agency pamphlet the moment agency begins. Agency begins the moment you sit down and discuss real estate with them, like at this consultation, or you open a door to show a house, or if you're talking to someone to give them a price opinion. So anyway, I have all the forms in PDF, so I just meet them and I talk to them about them, and then I just have a little template. I email to them over afterwards and explain to them I'm going to send it to them electronically to sign, so that then I have it in file. And I explain briefly what it all is, because with a buyer, even though it's vacant land, you're still doing law of agency. You should still do lead-based paint, and the only reason why is because vacant land sometimes will have an old house on it that's basically not livable, but it was built before '78, and because it's on the property, you have to still give them a lead-based paint. You also want to, now vacant land, you're not going to, I wouldn't worry about this, and that is home inspection, importance of that. And you also need to give them the wire fraud alert. So, but, you know, even if they're vacant land or whatever, quite honestly, I just have a buyer template, I have a seller template, and I just send it off. And I just tell them, here's everything I have to give you. They don't really question it. They're just like, yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, and you also do Form 41D, where you give them 3 Washington State inspectors. But they have to be licensed. You can't just say, oh, here's my neighbor Joe who inspects houses. Okay?
And please have a purchase and sale agreement for land.
So I would bring that. You want to bring buyer agency?
Yeah, this is a buyer that's looking for land.
Yeah. So questions for vacant land. Ask him, how's he going to buy it? Is he buying with cash? Is he going to buy with a loan? You're going to want to know that. If he's buying with a loan, you want to know, and a lot of this could overlap with any buyer, you guys. If they're buying with a loan, you want to know, are you already pre-approved? If you're not pre-approved, we need to get you pre-approved, because until you're pre-approved, you can't buy anything because no one's going to look at you. If it's cash, you got to talk to them about, well, you know, we're going to have to prove to the seller of whatever vacant land we buy that you do have cash. We're going to have to show them current statements with your name and the institution on them that the cash is there and it's readily available.
And there's forms for that.
No, it's just
No.
bank statements.
No, they'll just provide you statements.
Local banks, not
Yeah.
China bank.
So next thing with the vacant land is you got to ask them, well, what do you want to use the land for? You know, is he just wanting land to own land and hold on to it in hopes that maybe development will go out there one day and he can sell it? Or is he saying, oh, no, I just want vacant land here because I want to build a home in Kirkland, and so I'm looking for a lot. So you got to kind of find what kind of land he's looking for. And then say to him, well, you know, what price range are you thinking? And then here's one thing to note, okay? In your case, you don't know the land well enough to be able to say, if he said, oh, I'm going to spend $250,000 and I want to buy a vacant lot and I want it to be in Kirkland, I would probably say, well, there's no way that's going to happen because there's no lot that's going to be that cheap. But if he's saying, oh, I want way up in Oso, well, I would think you probably could buy a lot of land up there for that. So rather than go to that conversation, if you don't know really what, just say, okay, gather information, find out the area they want so you can set up a search.
No, regarding the lenders on land, not every lender will give a land loan. So
Yeah.
before you refer a land, and double check with your lender.
Yeah. Very good advice. So, you know, you're going to set up your, yeah?
So I have a question about this. We actually had a question in the real, excuse me, in the real estate examination exam. It says, it goes like this, a buyer wants to buy a vacant land and then asks his real estate agent if the land is buildable for a duplex. And the agent told him that he's personally going to check with the county.
No.
Right. Okay, I can answer your question right now.
The person buys it and he finds out that it's not buildable at all.
Right. All right. Do what?
Sorry.
That's a
Keep going.
pretty design.
It is.
If you buy land, you have to put feasibility period.
Yeah.
Make sure you have 3 months or 6 months.
Yeah, because if you're buying vacant land and they want to develop, you need to do a feasibility study in your contract, which would be a Form 22F. Correct?
Feasibility, yeah.
Yes. And that's basically, it's kind of like having a Form 35 inspection in a residential where you get to inspect the property. Feasibility now allows your client to take time to see that they can make sure they can build or do what they want with the land. The question that you brought up with the state is you have a client who's buying land. They say they want to do a duplex. You ran to the county and said, yes, you can. And now it closes and they find out, no, they can't.
No, they find out that it cannot be built at all.
Right. Right. But I guess what were the answers or the questions?
I still don't know the answer.
So the question was, you have a buyer who wants to buy vacant land to build a duplex.
Build a duplex and
then you
promises him to personally go to county and check.
Oh, okay, now I know the answer.
And check or not.
Okay.
And then,
Right, okay, here's the answer. So the question on the exam was that the agent then said, I will personally go to the county and find out if you can put a duplex on it. You're setting yourself up for a lawsuit.
First of all, it's not only about the county, because they have to do feasibility.
City, there's all sorts of things.
And surveys. On top of it, if it is wetlands, you cannot build anything, period.
Yeah. You need to understand in law of agency, when you take on a responsibility, then you better be the expert. Because law of agency says if you take this on that you're competent to get the right answers. So agents who say, I'm going to go to the county and I'm going to research this and check out all the zoning and this and that and the other, you're setting yourself up because now you have a buyer relying completely on what you said. What if you misread something at the city incorrectly? What if the person who's telling you on the city, oh yeah, you can do this or that, was not the right person to talk to? What if they said you can get permits for this, but they forgot to tell you, oh wait, it shows here half your property is wetlands. There's no way you could put a septic on that land now. So you don't. So the answer to that question on the state exam is that agent should never have gone down to the county and investigated this. They should have had the seller or the buyer do it. Buyers need to take on responsibilities. There's things you do and there's things you don't do. And one thing you don't do, like on the vacant land you're going out today, if he says he wants to build or whatever, you would say, well then let's put in a feasibility study so you'll have ample time to research and get everything you need. If you're a builder who's done this a lot and they know they're in the city limits, they might have a really short one. But if this is a guy just starting out, I would put like a 3-month feasibility in there at least because he's got to go and talk to the county and the city and make sure zoning's correct. I mean, all these things. You could, you know, you can look at the land and see if it has any zoning. And let's say it says RX8. You could go to the city and look on their site and see what is zoning RX8 and then maybe take a link to it and just say, here's what I saw, but you need to verify with the city if this is correct. Okay? But that's about the extent you would ever do. You never go down and take on that responsibility. Same thing with a condo. When you get a resale certificate, it's 350 pages. Many agents think, oh, great, I'm going to read through this 350 pages and because my client just said, well, is this a good resale certificate or a bad? And then they'll start advising them and say, no, this association's strong, everything looks great, go ahead and buy it. They move in. 3 months later, they get a huge $20,000 assessment on their unit, which, guess what? It was disclosed deep in that resale certificate. That agent didn't find it. That agent now is going to be sued because under agency law, they set themselves up as the expert of reading a resale certificate. I've never in my entire career read a resale certificate. And I never will unless I buy a condo. I inform them when I get it that they have 5 days to review it, that I want them to do it sooner than later because it takes time to get them answers, and that these are the people that they will talk to. You don't even contact and get the answers. They do. They need to learn how to talk to the management company or the HOA, and because these are the people they'll be working with if they buy the condo. You're not. So they need to ask the questions. Your job is to follow up on day 3. Do you have any questions? Well, no, I still haven't read it. Well, you only have 2 days. You really need to come up with this. We need to know. Or if they did have questions, say, have you got answers? If not, you go to the listing and say, look, we're 3 days into this. They asked questions on the second day. You know, we haven't heard anything and we have a timeline, so I want to make sure we're getting these answers. Your only thing is to watch that 5-day timeline because you have leverage during that 5 days. Your client can walk away. If it comes down to the morning of day 5 and they haven't had answers, you know what I do? I tell them, the agent right now, I call them up and say, look, I have in front of me a form signed already by my buyer that we're sending over at 8 p.m. tonight, and we're walking away from this deal unless you sign this extension I just sent over that says that we are now extending our 5-day review period to a 10-day review period because you, for some reason, are not communicating with the seller that they need these answers. And you have the leverage to have them sign it because they know at 8 p.m. you're walking away.
When we communicate with the other agents, do these communications need to be delivered in writing or
All
email works?
Writing is always best because the way you're going to do it is you're going to probably be emailing this to them with already a Form 34 extending the timeline that your client signed, and you're telling them in an email, and then I'd call them up and say, hey, by the way, I just sent this over there and we need to get this signed immediately unless you give us answers ASAP. You got to light a fire under them, folks, sometimes. Because I've been on both sides. I've been on the list side, and you know what, on the list side, I'm not asking anyone if you're getting your answers. And if that buyer's agent isn't telling me you aren't getting your answers, I'm not worried about it because I'm just like 3, 4, yoo-hoo, 5, we're out. But if I get a call saying they're not getting the answers, then I'm going to call my seller and say, you need to get on your association. We need to get these answers today.
Does emails count as written
Yes.
notices?
Yes.
Timestamp.
Good question. You guys on timelines are put on notice the moment you receive something in your email box. And you know how they make sure? There is, on the bottom of every contract will be your email, and it will show the brokerage email. And whenever you send any notices that involve timelines, you always send it to both emails. If you're lazy and you only send it to the agent's email, you have no proof that reached them within the timeline. Because the brokerage email will kick back a response and it'll say, thank you, we have received your email at this time. The brokerage's email were developed by the MLS as a way for us to acknowledge timeline deliveries so that we could use emails. If you don't use the brokerage email, you have no timeline delivery notice. You can't prove that you sent over this form to that agent at 8:50 p.m. before your 9 p.m. deadline, and that agent didn't even go and look at their email till the next day at noon because it was a Sunday. So they're going to say, I never even saw it till Sunday. We're sorry, you missed your deadline. And you did because you didn't send to the brokerage email. So always get in the habit of sending to both emails, okay? Yes?
Can we go to the land question?
Yeah.
It's important to have utilities if you want to build something. And that lawsuit regarding water rights and wells in some areas.
I don't know everything about that lawsuit
but
because
I'm saying
it's because I'm in the city. But yeah, there's water right lawsuits. I mean, this is why you would want to tell them along feasibility is because vacant land, they're going to have to see if utility, I mean, I'm talking if you're in the country. You have to see if you can get utilities there. They're going to have to find out if they can build a septic system or if there's a sewer line in the street they can hook up to. They got to find out if there are any wetlands, because if there are, then that affects whether they can build close to it or build it all on it. There's so many things they got to figure out. It's not like I just bought land and I'm going to build now. Things are highly regulated everywhere. Yes?
Can I go back to HOAs? So the standard default language in the 22D is delivery by within 10 days, mutual, and then a 5-day review period. There is also a transfer fee or of some kind.
Sometimes.
Sometimes now. We would never fill that in. We don't know what the HOA says, so leave it blank.
Actually, there is a
seller will pay.
Okay. HOA, a management company, state law has 10 days to deliver that to a seller to give you. Agents like to say, oh, we want that resale in 5 days, and they'll put 5 there instead of 10. All you're doing now is you're forcing the seller to pay a rush charge, which the seller's going to be a little pissy about, to be able to get it to you in 5 days. But now get this. Let's say they don't get it to you in 5 days. They get it to you in 7 days. And you come to me and you go, well, they broke contract. They didn't get here in 5 days. No, they didn't. Because just because you wrote 5 days in the contract does not mean you're above what the state law says. And the state law says they have 10 days, no matter what you say. So they wouldn't have broken the contract. But here's the other caveat. If it did say 5 days, and they gave it to you the 7th day, when does your 5-day review period start?
At the end of 5.
Correct.
So you lost 2 days.
Yeah, because if your contract said 5 days, but they took 7 to get it, well, your 5-day window began on the day right after the 5th day. So they gave it to you on the 7th day. They just ate up 2 days of your 5-day period. And agents make this mistake a lot because they think, well, they were 2 days late, that's fine. They just gave it to us, so now we have 5 days. No. Your timelines begin the moment their timeline ends. It doesn't matter if it's in your hand or not. So if they're going to be late, you might be thinking again, get an extension put in there for that. You will get 5 days once it's given. The other thing on resale certificates is that they are piecemeal to you sometimes by small associations. And agents think, well, we haven't got the whole resale, so we don't begin our 5 days. Well, guess what? Your 5 days begin when they say, here's the resale certificate, whether it's all there or not. It begins. So, if it's missing parts, your job is to get them. And again, I would be in there saying we're going to get an extension on the 5 days because my client has the right of 5 days when you get me the last piece.
And by the way, the resale is all the exhibits.
Yeah. It's a lot of stuff, you guys. It's like 350 pages usually.
Now, regarding
It's
the
bylaws.
transfer fee, he was talking about transfer fees.
Well, no, transfer fee is some associations setting up a new owner in the association, they do a transfer fee. The management companies are charging for every little thing they can. Another thing they'll charge is the seller will have to pay for a resale certificate, and then they're going to have to pay also for the management company to answer escrow's questions.
Yep.
So the transfer fee is now in the contracts where you can say, if there is a transfer fee, we want the seller to pay for it or the buyer will assume it. So that's just another question. If you're a multiple offer, would I say seller pay it? No, I would say buyer pay it. If it wasn't a multiple offer and I'm the only one, I probably would say seller pay it. Just depends.
Now, even if you waive a resale certificate, you don't want to review. You still, buyer still has the right 5 days.
I was just going to talk about that one.
That's correct. Yeah.
Other people in multiple offers are like, people are doing this. They're like posting resale certificates up online with their listing because they want people to read it, figure if they like the association, inspect everything so that when they present an offer, they'll go, we've waived inspection, we've waived the resale review period, we want to be locked in and we want to buy this house. If I'm on the list side, I'm going to let them think they waived the 5-day review period. But they cannot waive the 5-day review period. That's against the law. So even if you take an offer and they say, we waived it, they can still come back within 5 days and get out of the contract. So you should be aware of that to let your seller know, this agent thinks he can waive it. I'm just letting you know they can't, so we aren't going to make a big scene about it with them, but we still have a 5 days window. They can walk away. If you send over a resale certificate to an agent, say 4 days before you go on the market, and then they come in and waive it, and they say they received it. Well, when you're filling out the purchase sale and you say you received it, always say the day you received it is the day you wrote the contract. There's no way they can prove that they sent it 4 days before that the buyer saw it.
By yourself.
You know? There's no way, because you weren't even in a contract. So you aren't officially being put on notice. Now, if you want to make a stronger offer and you want to say we saw it 4 days before, you would probably say, yeah, we received it on that date 4 days before, so they know, hey, you have 1 day left. So it depends on the situation how you're going to handle that. You know, because I've been on, and I'm smart, you guys, I've represented many buyers, and I go in and say, yeah, we're waiving that whole resale certificate, but I tell my buyer, we can still walk, but let's let them think we waived it.
I think that is a big way. He helped me one time. He had mentioned this to me. My seller wanted me to, like the seller on the other hand, wanted me to waive the resale certificate. And I talked to you and you said, do it, but you was...
Now, if we include, you know, on 22D, we put not 5 days for the buyer to review, but put 1 day. Now, which is 5 or 1?
5.
So still 5 by the law.
Even, no, that's what I'm trying to tell you guys. People do this. They will say, you have 2 days to give us a resale certificate and you have 1 day to review it. And the buyer's agents will say, we've got 1 day to review it.
Okay.
Well, I'm on the list side of multiple offer and we're going to go with you. I'm going to say, you foolish idiot, you just let your client think they have 1 day to review it. They have 5 days. Does not matter what you write in your contract around a 5-day review period or a 10-day to give you the resale certificate. Washington State law is above any contract because we all have to follow the laws of the state. So if you say you get a 1-day review period, it does not matter. The law says they have 5 days. You cannot suddenly decide you're changing the law. Yeah.
What about the 10-day HOA review?
Same thing. The law says they have, no, you have 5 days to review, 10 days to prepare the resale. That's the law. So if you put 5 days to get the resale, you technically do have 10 days.
What if it's HOA for a house and not a condo? It doesn't have resale. I mean, a resale certificate.
I mean, you're talking about the residential communities that will like say, oh, we're $50 a month just to keep the roads. Technically, there's still an HOA. Technically, there's still a resale certificate. What happens in those situations is, first of all, don't assume they don't have one. Because if there's a management company, they have something. But sometimes you're going to be told all our rules, bylaws, everything are on the website. Your client can go look at the website.
And sometimes regulations will be in title as CCNRs, so you better have title contingency.
So basically, you've got to find out where all the things are and then let them read it, but they still have 5 days. Doesn't matter if it's a $50
So
amount.
the agent can say it's posted to a URL, go here.
No. You can only say that if you're in you have to contact the association and you have to order a resale certificate. If the association comes back, because it's a little one, and let's say you have an 8-unit condo, and they'll say, well, we don't even know what a resale certificate is. Then you got to teach them. And you go on Express Docs, there's an actual resale certificate receipt. It's 4 pages. You give it to them and standard questions, okay? And then you got to tell them everything that's on 22D. You need bylaws, we need your rules, we need your CCNRs, we need minutes, we need reserve studies, everything. And they have to provide it. Now, here's the thing. You got a small association, let's say they just provide pieces and they say, we just don't have it. Then you got to go to that buyer and say, I'm sorry, I've given you everything they have. They just don't do that. The buyer has to decide if they're okay with that. And if they are, great, move forward. If not, they're going to walk away on your 5-day review period. And they legally can.
There is an MLS form
Yeah.
that runs through all the questions. They're very complicated.
Yeah, that's the resale receipt I was telling you about. It's on there.
When is that ever used? I mean, that's very complicated.
The resale certificate receipt form on Express Docs is used quite often. You will find that in very big management companies, they will have their own version of it. You will be given with a HOA resale receipt, what's called the resale receipt within the whole resale receipt. It's about 4 pages, and it's just a general overview saying if anyone's in arrears on dues, are there any lawsuits, you know.
Special assessments.
Special assessments.
It's a summary.
It's a summary. You can read the summary just to see if there's a red flag. And if you see a red flag, bring that up to your buyer. But you're supposed to take that receipt and your buyer signs it and the seller signs it. Now, the date your buyer signs that and the seller signs it has nothing to do with your 5-day review period. Your 5-day review period happened the moment that hit your inbox.
And it says that they received it, not that they agreed to it, and not that they approved it.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with approving the resale. All it is saying we have it. That's all it's saying.
You just said if you wrote 5 days in the contract and we received it on the 7th day, we would lose 2 days.
Yeah.
So how come?
Because it's the way the contract was
Does
written.
state law still say you have 5 days after you receive it?
You do, but the contract says that it's the same way with inspections period also on you have timelines. So if you say you have 10 days to give me the resale certificate, okay? And they don't give it to you the 12th day. Well, the contract said the seller had 10 days, period. It also says, if you read 22-day in there, that after 10 days, your timeline to review begins. So if you have 10 days to provide it, but you give it on the 12th day, well, your 5 days review began on the 11th day because they had to give it to you in 10 days, period. So your 5 days begin on day 11, not on day 13. Because timelines always begin the day after you're given.
Even if they were late, our timeline still begins.
Yes.
That's why we asked for an extension.
Yes.
What form do you use for extension?
On that, I would use a Form 34.
34.
And just write it. It's the same thing on inspections. You go out, you inspect your property. You say you have 5-day inspection period, and then further down it says you could get 3 additional days. Okay? Well, you do your inspection on the 2nd day, and you go, well, we're going to have to get a lot of contractors in here and get bids. So you send over on the 2nd day, we want our 3-day extension. Great. Well, you just canceled out the 3 days of your 5 days, and now your 3 days begin. You have a 5-day inspection period and 3 additional days. If you want 3 additional days, you send over the extension for 3 additional days on day 5. Because if you say on day 4, 3, 2, 1, that cancels out the rest of those 5 days because now we move on to the additional days. Same thing on inspection response timeline. You send over your response, and let's say the seller has 3 days to respond to your inspection. And now we're on day 4 and they haven't responded. And now you're on day 5 and suddenly they respond. And now you say, oh, I get 3 days. No, you don't. You get 1 day. Because they had to respond to you in 3 days. They did not. So your 3 days now begin. Because sometimes sellers will not even respond ever on an inspection response. And you know why? Because their response of no response is telling you they're going to do nothing. And they're testing the agent. Because they didn't respond on the after 3 days. Well, your 3 days are start, folks. You either walk away, accept that they're going to do nothing, or you have 3 days to negotiate some kind of deal. And the other mistake people do is, let's say seller responds, you don't like it, so you respond to the seller within your 3 days and say, well, we were offering you an alternative, and then you sit back and think, well, now they have 3 days to respond. No. There's one go-around each way. Seller, this is what I want. You have 3 days because the contract says to respond. Seller responds, we'll do A, B, but not C. And you have 3 days to now accept it, walk away, or negotiate another solution. But you only have 3 days because that's what the contract says. And after that 3 days, you're done.
Unless you make an extension.
Unless you give it some kind of extension in there, yeah. But you're done. So you watch these timelines. Don't sit on them. You need to get answers. You need your client to know they need to get answers.
So what you're saying is, like, you waited for 3 days, you responded back, and if you don't hear from them, you get back to them. Otherwise, if you don't get anything done by the end of the 5 days, you're in a contract, but you will not get any of your inspection items done.
You assumed everything.
Yeah, we just assumed everything.
Yeah, yeah.
So line 8 of the 22D still falls underneath that same timeline?
What's line 8?
That's the 10-day
HOA.
inspection.
Yeah, if you have 10 days and they give it to you on day 8, your 5 days begin then on the 9th day. If they give it to you on 12 days, they've already cut 2 days into your 5-day review period.
So if they didn't check that box,
Right.
then technically you're thinking that they waived it.
No, no. You got to read your contracts because it says there, if you don't check the box, it means that it's 10 days or something.
It's in Form 21. There is a paragraph.
Yeah. I mean, HOA and inspection are 2 different things. So you need to read the forms.
So you can inspect until you don't have to inspect, if you need to inspect.
Yeah.
And if they don't want to grant you the time, then...
No, they have to. It says in the contract, it's spelled out. Seller has to provide you access during your inspection period. They cannot refuse.
No, I meant if you have more inspections that you need to follow up. You've discovered something you
Right.
don't like, you got to hire outside contractors.
Then you might have to put out your inspection period. I've done that.
You bet.
I mean, I've had inspections and then all of a sudden it comes up, oh, sewer line. Huge break. We can't even get past 10 feet out of the house. Well, we don't even know what's even beyond that, folks. I talked my client first out of like panic attack. Because trust me, your first time buyers, they're going to be like thinking that house is going to fall apart with that inspector. So first of all, I advise them, I always say, hey, sleep on it. We'll talk about it tomorrow when we get the report and we look at it. And then after we get the report and we look at it, then I start talking about what we're going to do. But I also always say to the inspector at the inspection, I say, so after, at the very end, I go, and after listening, walk around, I always say, so of everything you saw here today, is any of this you feel absolutely major? I clue my buyer in right before the inspection starts. We're only looking for major issues on this home. We're not looking for cosmetic fixes because no seller will cosmetically fix your house because you saw it cosmetically when you saw it. We're looking for things that we could not see that are major fix. To me, a major fix is $1,000 or more. If they come through and just say there's some outlets that aren't GFI or little things here and there, and your seller says to you, I want everything on that inspection done,
You shoot yourself.
I'll look at my buyer and go, you realize you're not buying a brand new house, correct? Because seller isn't giving you a brand new house. And if I go over and just show him the inspection and say do everything on this inspection, they'll probably come back and say they'll do nothing.
We did this.
You got to like sit down with them and really talk to them what really, really is important. And if it's just all these little things and they're little things, then I might say to them, well, rather than ask them to fix little things, I can tell you they're going to do them cheap. You're not going to like it. Let me see if I can get you some closing costs instead. So you can hire some handyman to do all these little things for you and get it done the way you want.
This is really important. I also actually tell what's the top 3 to the inspector. I don't want to ask top 15. Top 3 that must be done now. Because if you're coming with 15 items, you're scaring the seller.
You won't get all 15.
Yeah. So just get the most important.
Yeah.
If you want to negotiate.
Yes.
On the subject of a resale certificate, is it something that's given only to condos or is it any dwelling, whether it's a condo
No.
or a
No.
single house?
It's just condos and co-ops.
Okay.
Condos and co-ops have resale certificates. Residential homes do not.
Residential homes that are part of a HOA.
Now, if you have a residential home that's part of an HOA, and this is the unique situation we're talking about, because you do get a lot of them on the east side, communities that built up, and then they'll have like $50 or $85 a month, and all it does is it just keeps the entrance to the community all clean, and maybe there's a little park in there for the kids they take care of, and they maintain the roads. And then they have rules like no RVs parked in the street or something silly like that. Then and what's really more confusing in these communities, some of them actually are condominiums, even though they're all residential houses.
Detached condos.
And some are residential, but they just have an HOA. So you have to go on tax records and look at how they are on tax records, because they'll say if it's residential or condo. So you know if you're using Form 28 or 21 to write it. But when you have those kind of HOAs, they're the ones that you as a listing agent will go to and say, we need to order the resale certificate, and they may come back and say, we don't do them. We have our website, all our rules are on the website. And if it's one of those situations, you have to go to the listing agent and let them know, and do it to both emails and say, our resale certificate is just the website. I'm informing you now, here's the link, here's the person at the office to call with any questions. Please let your buyer know so that they can look it over in the next 5 days. Boom. And now you officially let them know that website is the resale certificate. That's what the HOA said, period. Okay? Yeah.
So one question on single family homes which have the HOA. There is a review period on
Right.
21, and if the buyer has crossed it,
You cannot waive an HOA review period. You can cross it out and tell your seller, oh, we're going to waive it, but you can't. The Washington state law says if you have an HOA, you have 5 days to review and walk away. Period. It's Washington state law. There's no ifs, ands, or buts.
so if you waive all contingencies, if you absolutely waive all contingencies, but the seller could think that you're waiving everything, but you still have the HOA review
Yes.
period, even
Yeah.
though I have crossed it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, you can waive it all, and they might think you waived it all, but yes, you still have your 5 days to review it once they give it to you.
Where we can read the laws?
What?
Where we can read the real estate laws? On the website?
Real estate laws, go to washington.gov, and you can look up all the real estate laws on their website.
Because a lot of real estate, and you being very experienced, a lot of basically listing agents particularly, they'll say,
Yeah.
cross the, you know.
Okay, that brought up a subject right now. Okay, listing agents.
Yeah, verification.
If you are a listing agent, do not ever put in additional broker remarks and say, seller requires the following things for their offer. You cannot, and then you say on there, we require that you waive inspection. We require that you waive HOA. And I've seen this out there.
And W-2s.
You're setting yourself up for a lawsuit because a lawyer will come in and that buyer will sue you. That buyer will sue the seller. They'll sue the brokerage because they moved in that house and now the sewer backed up. And they find out they had whatever problems. But they're going to show that lawyer, here's where the broker remarks are that said, to purchase our home, we're requiring that you waive inspections and this. And they're going to say, seller, you cannot prevent a buyer from doing due diligence of a home when they purchase it. It's in the first 5 pages of the contract. You can put on broker remarks, in making your offer today, we suggest the following items to make it stronger.
Yeah.
You can suggest it,
Yeah.
but you cannot make it a requirement.
Yeah.
And I saw one just the other day. They were requiring, I forget what it was, but the agent called me and I said, well, they're just setting it up so they can get sued.
What about an as-is property?
As is means nothing.
Yeah.
Period. I love as is. You know how many as is properties I've been with a buyer and they'll say, this is being sold as is. And we say, yeah, we're just, we're not worried about anything, but we're still doing an inspection, but we know it's as is, right? Then we go in there and then suddenly I find out the sewer line. Trust me, you're gonna learn sewer lines. And suddenly we scope it and there's a major break.
And you tell them, oh,
And we
the
can't
lender is
get
not
beyond
gonna
it.
give money.
And I'm going to go back and my inspection response is going to be seller to repair sewer line, and when it's open to where the break is, seller is allowing us to come back with our inspector, scope the rest of the line at that time, and if there's any more issues like breaks, movement, etc., the seller's fixing that as well. And they'll say, Eric, this is as is. We told you it was as is. And I go, I know you did. But that was before we knew about the sewer line. And I guess, either I guess you're going to have to work with my buyers or you're going to have to work with the next buyer when we walk, because you're going to have to disclose on a Form 17 now all about that sewer line. And I don't know any buyer that's going to come in and not have you deal with that issue. So, but my buyer's not walking away. But he wants to deal with this with you
I
now.
also put the lender. But this is so important, but we cannot get financing. It's not up to us. Lender will require sewer line, like major. Roof, I got a roof replaced in this market. Because,
So-
yeah.
So
what-
how much of
Regardless, the
What?
seller, doesn't matter. In the seller, you can come to the seller and say, we need to get this done. The seller could say, you know what, we're not doing it. And
Yeah.
then you opt out, next guy comes in, bam, 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 we want all this, and that seller can keep choosing.
Yeah, they can do that.
No.
The seller can say, no, we're not going to do it. It's as
We
is.
just want it. And
Yeah.
it's done, right?
Yeah.
Good luck.
But like in multiple offers, trust me, there's a couple of years ago, there was a multiple offer, and they had such a major sewer problem, it was going to be probably $35,000 to fix. And sewer lines are very expensive if you're replacing an entire one. And they had multiple offers, and guess what? Everybody waived the inspection, and everybody said, we'll take on that sewer line. And it went $85,000 over asking because they wanted that neighborhood. That was a lucky seller. Yeah.
How much of regulation is in place? Supposing a buyer comes, looks at a home, does their inspection, and then in the back and forth, the seller says, hey, we're not agreeing to the terms, we're going back online. And they relisted the home after inspection, so it's pending inspection status. So how much of regulation is in place for them to disclose all the issues, the major issues that we found from our inspection?
First of all, as a or as a buyer's agent, if you walk away, don't monitor that listing agent thinking you're going to find out if they tell the next buyer whether or not they know everything. You don't know. They could still have the same exact Form 17 on there.
Right.
But what you don't know is that maybe whoever comes and buys the house, they're giving him the Form 17, but they're also now giving him your inspection. Because you may have sent over the inspection report as a screw you. Oh, by the way, we're not buying it, but I thought you would like our inspection report. Here you go. That agent will never want to work with you again, by the way, because now that seller's responsible for everything that's on that inspection report.
No, but assuming that the inspection report was not sent, and they know the issues that are major, and if their Form 17 is not reflecting all the major issues.
But you don't know everything, Robbie.
They have to disclose at some point in time.
The seller could disclose that to the buyer by email. They could say, "Thank you for the offer. By the way, we wanted to let you know officially that this other buyer walked away, and here was the issue."
What if they don't?
Well, what I'm trying to tell you is you will not know because you're not privy to any of that. So don't even go there. Move on with your buyer to a new home to buy and let that one go away.
I think this question is, you're on the listing side.
Yeah.
Now you're on the listing side, you better disclose.
You have to.
You, under agency law, are required to disclose any material facts you know of a property. It's your law.
Even if you don't have the report, they told you they inspected and they
You need to have something in writing, right?
No.
No?
No.
Just telling them.
If I'm the listing agent and you just told me, Eric, we just inspected the whole property and my buyers decided they don't want to buy because we found a major break in the sewer line. I never saw the report or anything. I now know a material fact. Do you think that's not going to come out with the next one? You don't have to have written proof. You can say the other one left because they said there was a break in the sewer line. We haven't had it inspected and we didn't see the report. That's a material fact.
But if it's only verbal, how are we going to prove that you already know that?
Well,
You don't
I
want to
just
go there.
just don't even go there. You guys got to remember also, you may have a seller one day who will tell you something, or let's say a buyer walked and said that was the reason. The seller said, "I don't want to change my Form 17. I don't want to tell anyone." You have to tell them that you will. Your seller cannot. You're not off the hook if a seller says, "Oh, by the way, my house flooded 3 times in the last 10 years, but I don't want to tell anybody that." Well, guess what, seller? As your listing agent right now, I'm telling you, you better disclose it because I have to tell every agent who calls now that material fact if you don't disclose it because I'm required by law. And if you don't, you could lose your license.
So we should have them update, if we learn this something like that, we should have them, ask them to update the Form 17.
I would. I mean, if you said, we're leaving because there was a sewer line break, I would probably say to my guy first, we're going to have to deal with this. Why don't we fix it? So let's just keep it pending inspection. Fix it ASAP because we can probably get it done in a day once we get a sewer company in there. Then we don't have to change Form 17. We can go back on the market, and now I can put in their brand new sewer line. And I can tell anyone who calls, why did they leave? They left because the sewer line was broke. They didn't want to negotiate on it, so we decided to go ahead and fix the sewer line.
And you don't have to say anything on the Form 17?
No. Form 17, you don't have to say it was broken because it's fixed.
The seller will be happy about that, though.
Well, guess what happens when you're a seller and you got a bad sewer line? Like it or not, it falls on you.
Well, we had a buyer. We don't want to sell him, so now we want to fix it and find another buyer.
Because guess what? The next buyer that comes along is going to throw the sewer line right at you as well. Don't assume when you have one buyer, they're going to be like, oh, we don't care that sewer line's broke. The only time you get away with that is if you have multiple offers.
So if someone is trying to use a bad sewage scope as a negotiation tool, as the listing agent, do you have the right then to see the report to make sure that they're not just
Well, yeah, I mean, if they came to me and said, we want this repair, blah, 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 I would say, we would like to see the sewer report so we can consult with the company as well. And quite honestly, when you send over this thing saying you wanted this repaired, you're going to send that report with it anyway at that point. You want proof. Because if you don't provide it, then how do they know you're telling the truth? Same thing if you're going to have something repaired that was on the inspection report. Don't send the whole inspection report. Just show the page on the inspection report that's talking about the thing you want fixed. Okay? You got to remember, this is a relationship business, and getting to know and having a really good reputation with agents will go very far. Because like if I have 5 offers and there's Jim Smith, and I know I've worked with Jim Smith on 2 other deals, and he was always easy to work with, no screaming matches, smooth as smooth, guess what? I might kind of put Jim Smith on top of the pile and tell my client, this agent's really good, no issues, knows how to control a buyer. I really strongly recommend this one, even though this other offer here might have 1 or 2 better terms. Why don't we just call up Jim Smith really quick and see if his clients will match these terms?
Even if his offer is lower, can they accept his offer? Higher one?
A seller can accept any offer they want. It's not just because you have a higher price offer doesn't mean the seller has to accept it. The other buyer could have terms that you guys don't, that what's more important to them than price. So they can. And just like in that example I just said with Jim Smith, I like Jim Smith. We worked well together. And he didn't have as good an offer, right? But I went back to Jim Smith and I said, look, your offer's $10,000 less, and you guys didn't waive financing. Do you guys want to match this one for $10,000 and waive financing? Well, I got that shot because they like me, because he and I have this relationship. So that's why I'm trying to say your relationship's really important. So if you send over an entire inspection report, that agent's not going to like you. Is that going to benefit you if you go up against another listing of theirs? No. You always be professional and do the right thing. You only send in the page he needs to see.
So they need to disclose only material defects and not every small defect. Like if there's a small faulty patch on the roof, it's not a major. If it's not a major material defect, like it has like 1 year left or something like that.
They only have to answer the questions on Form 17, period.
I had this a question from one of my team members and don't do it. She's calling me, oh, we're terminating the contract, but we want to be nice to the next buyer. Can we send the inspection report so the next buyer doesn't pay? Oh my God. Do you realize what you're doing for the listing agent?
It's a tactic where they're trying to screw the listing agent.
No. They're actually walking away. And they wanted to be nice to next buyer, so next buyer doesn't pay for inspection report.
Right.
And they wanted to send the full inspection report to the listing agent.
Did the listing agent ask for it or no?
No. Do not send the full inspection report, period.
Yeah, but now let me say this. Maybe you would tell them in your circumstance, they didn't want to see the inspection report, and that's fine. But let's say I have someone's going to walk on the inspection report and they just go, Eric, they just got cold feet. They just didn't like the house. There's really nothing major on it. It's just little nitpicky things on the inspection report. Now, I might actually say, well, yeah, if they want to send that over, that would be great. Because I would say to my seller, they're not walking away on anything. Why not have that inspection report in hand? We'll just attach it with the Form 17 and send it over to the next buyer so they would realize, yeah, there really isn't anything wrong, and we don't have to pay for an inspector.
But she didn't even, I told her, do what listing agent tells you, call and ask.
Well, no, you always ask the listing agent, don't assume.
Yeah, ask the listing agent, because she just wanted to send it. I'm like, no.
No,
do not even.
No, and here's the other thing. As an agent, you got to remember that inspection report is owned by your seller. You're not free. You're not free, or no, by the buyer. You're not correct. You don't have the authority to just suddenly decide to be nice and send the inspection report over to the listing agent after you walk away without getting the permission of your buyer. They paid for it, they own it. It's their decision whether they want you to give it to the listing agent, not yours. Yes?
You know, one of the classes, my classes is one of the classes that the teacher said that you ask for credit, that the money for credit. You don't use 35R, you use 34.
You can use 35R. She's wrong, or he's wrong. Yeah, you're saying seller to provide $4,000 towards closing costs.
It didn't make sense to me, but
I can see why the agent's saying use Form 34 over 35R just because they're worried that it might make the underwriter question. But an underwriter only sees what you provide. And if you have a Form 35R and it just says buyer requests $2,000 closing costs and the seller signs yes, then you're going to get $2,000 closing costs. The underwriter's not going to say, well, what's that $2,000 for? That's what that agent's trying to prevent, because they're thinking, well, we could sign off 35R, everything's fine, but we've signed a 34 over here saying we're going to get more closing costs, because in their mindset, they're thinking there will be nothing to make the underwriter scared to want to know what the 2,000's for. I've never had an underwriter say, what are these closing costs covering?
But if you put toward closing cost for these repairs, then you have issue.
Well, here's what you don't do. Yeah. Let's say you put a Form 35R together and you wrote 4 items to be done. And now the seller comes back and says, well, we'll just give you $2,000 closing cost. And then you sign at the bottom, you accept. Well, guess what? The underwriter still sees you have 4 problems. And that underwriter might require that one of them they find is structurally important and that it has to be done before closing. In that situation, we've already verbally agreed that we're going to do closing costs. Send over a new Form 35R and just say, we want $3,000 closing costs, and they'll sign off.
So can you list the problems and ask for money on 35R?
Well, you can send over originally, here's the problems because we want you to fix. But if the seller comes back and says, fine, we'd rather give you $5,000 closing cost, okay? And your guys are, great, that'll be great. Then you smarter agents go, great, well then let's just write up a brand new Form 35R that you send us that says you want $5,000 closing costs, and we'll just sign that that's okay, because we don't want, oh, here's $5,000 because here's all the problems with the house, because the underwriter will read the problems with the house.
Might be a red flag for them from the underwriter's
Yeah, start a new 35R.
Yeah.
I usually start a new 35R as a buyer approved and put a 34 credit closing. Same document.
So it's okay to just delete a form and forget it?
Yeah, you just do a new form. Yeah.
So if I have a 35 on and I say see attached Form 34.
Yeah.
And then I ask for what I want in repairs.
Mm-hmm.
They come back and say, okay, here's 10 grand or whatever. And I end up writing a new 34 and just say the parties have agreed to seller will pay 10 grand towards prepaid closing costs. Period. Do I have to show that original 34 to anyone other than the seller?
No, because that original 34 that you wrote that had all the list of things, it's not part of the contract. Seller never signed it.
So if they, right, so, okay, great.
You have to show the documents that have both signatures. But if you're going back and forth and changing, remove the documents, clear it up, and put both signatures on clean documents.
I mean, sometimes you will have a Form 34 and you'll have 10 items and they'll say, we'll do 5 and cross out 5. Well, depending on the 5 they crossed out, you might think, well, let's make it clean. Let's just write a Form 34 really quick with the 5 items that you're going to do. The other thing you guys should start waking up to, Form 17. We all send over Form 17 with our offer. Great, no problem. Form 17 is a disclosure form. It's not part of your contract. And agents take, oh, it's all in one nice PDF. They'll have disclosures, Form 17, all of this. And then they'll just send off to escrow, or they'll send off to their lender, here's the mutual contract. You just gave an underwriter a Form 17 to read. And that underwriter could pull things off Form 17 and say, we think this is a problem that needs to be dealt with. You do not have to show a Form 17 to underwriters. Be smart. Take that one giant PDF and make sure you have one PDF of just the mutual contract. The other things go in your folder for .loop, but you only want to show the lender the mutual contract. That's all they want to see, folks.
Online
one
question.
Okay, I'll let you.
If you send over a new Form 35R, what about the dates when they sign or after the timeline dates?
Well, you would probably put in there that they signed the dates within the timeline. And the thing you got to remember too is when you're negotiating 35R, you're operating within those timelines. And whether you're writing a new, cleaner version, you still have to get it in within your timeline period. So you understand? So you're still within your timeline. So you don't have to worry about it. Okay? Yeah.
She was ahead. She was ahead.
Okay.
But
Yeah. So regarding, you said you don't need to send your mutual, but these days we take Form 17 and we make sure that the buyer is signing, like 2 of the 3.
yeah.
So then basically what you're saying is have that all together as part of the mutual, that when you're sending your lender, remove Form 17
Yeah.
off. That's what you're saying.
Don't show your lender Form 17. Show them just the mutual contract. And I'm lazy. I've sent it all off too, but
You learn the hard way.
you learn. But one day it will bite you in the ass. You're gonna go, oh my
learn the
God!
hard
And
way.
then guess what? You'll never do it again.
Yeah.
But now you got a client that's pissed off because of your being lazy and negligent.
And the way you pull out Form 17 is PDF split and then
Yeah.
remove.
It's not
Form
hard.
17, it's not hard.
I can do it, and I'm tech challenged. Okay, yeah.
So is there considered contract when a client walk into open house and he told you, well, after talking he liked you, but he said, last night when I look up on the Redfin website and I click on like the agent, like say, I want to show an agent. But now when he in your open house, he said, I'd like you to write my offer.
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay to do that, or
Yeah.
you have to cancel that?
No.
Does
No.
he have a buyer agency agreement?
If you have a buyer,
Doesn't even matter.
Evaporated?
Doesn't matter. Everybody.
Doesn't matter? Okay.
It is open season on all buyers, all the time. I would hope you would be respectful of another Keller Williams agent and not maybe steal them in your brokerage, because that doesn't go really well. But no, listing agreements. When that seller signs a listing agreement with an agent, you have no reason to talk to that person. The moment you find someone has a listing agreement, you shut your mouth and you tell them, I can't advise you or solicit you at all. Because if you do, you could get in big trouble with DOL if it's reported. Because it's very clear, once they sign a listing agreement, that relationship cannot be having other agents saying, well, I do a better job than he would, blah, blah, blah. You can get busted. But now buyer agency agreements, that's between that client and that agent. And if they walk in on your open house and for some reason or other they like you better and they want to write at that moment because you told them, hey, they're looking at offers right after this open, but I have with me a contract and we can fill it right now and then put you in with the other offers. Do you want to do it? And they say yes, go ahead and write it up. Do you need to say to them, do you have a buyer agency with another agent? No, you don't have to.
Am I a listing agent or buyer's agent at the open house?
A listing agent and an open house can write for a buyer as
Correct.
a dual agent.
Correct. I can write as a dual agent.
Yeah, they don't have to ask if they have a buyer
I can
agency.
even write as a seller's agent and not represent the buyer.
Yes, you as a listing agent at an open house could write up an offer and say, I don't want to do dual agency. I'm not going to represent you, but I'll write it up. And you just don't check the box, you represent them.
And you can still get the commission.
No.
Yeah, that's why
No.
it goes to your seller.
Yes. But I got a call today, and I get these calls all the time, you guys. One of our agents today called up upset. He had shown 4 houses to a buyer, said they had a great relationship, had a buyer agency. They went to an open house this weekend. They found an open he didn't even bother to send them. And the agency in the open house wrote up an offer, and they're in mutual acceptance now. And he was upset because they had buyer agency and thought he deserved his commission. Well, here's what you're going to hear from Eric when you call and you cry. And I'll let you cry. And I'm going to say, today is a hard lesson. You lost the client because you didn't go with him out that day to show the open house. You obviously did not get enough of an established relationship where they knew if they went to an open house that you've lectured them that those agents there are not there for your benefit. If it's the listing agent, his only prerogative is to get a contract. He's not thinking your best interest. If it's not the listing agent, then it's a person here is probably brand new in the business and a new agent, doesn't know a hell of a lot, but they're desperate to write an offer and they're going to write one. And you know what? I say that because I want to make you look bad before my client goes out. I've never lost a client writing an offer at an open house because I've taught them beforehand what goes on with an open house now that they're my buyer. But if your client writes an offer and you have a buyer agency and you come to me and say you want your 3% commission because you wrote 3% on it, I'm going to say, well, first, before we would even take this suit on, we're going to go talk to our lawyers. And he's going to have to make a decision that he feels 90% sure he's going to be able to get that commission if we go to court. Because we're going to have to sue your buyer. You need to realize that once that lawsuit happens, all over social media, your name is going to be Eric Robinson at Keller Williams sues his buyers. I would never work with him. And it's going to spread like wildfire.
And if you lose,
and if you win, we're going to subtract out all the lawyer fees. And then it will go into like a normal commission, whatever's left over, minus your cap. Or if you lose, you lose. But either way, win or lose, you will now have the reputation that you sue your buyers. Is it worth it to you on the short term to go out and do that? Or do you just want to say, I learned a hard lesson today and maybe I need to work harder next time in establishing a stronger bond with my buyers so this doesn't happen? And you know where it happens a lot is you send them off to new construction sites. Or they just suddenly see, oh, look, there's this new development down the road, honey. Let's go look. You know what? You should be telling your buyers up front. If you go see any new construction, any developer site, please be aware, they will not tell you this. You walk in the door and you announce to them that I am your agent. Here are some of my cards. Take them with you. Slap it down on the table before you register your name, because they are going to ask you to register your name. They will say real lightly, do you have an agent? Or they may not even ask. And if you don't check the box, you have an agent, you have just announced that if you buy in that development, that agent sitting in that desk will get all the commission and that they are now your representative. They will tell you I can still represent you, but what they're going to do is tell me, oh, well, you're only going to get a 1% commission now because our policy is unless they register you as their agent on their very first visit, you will not get 3%. So, if you are working with clients and they're looking in development, you better have that conversation. Same thing with condo developments. These new towers that you're going to start seeing popping up again. They have all on-site policies. And I just tell them up front, just like I tell them about those newbie open house people that are just not even worthy enough to write an offer yet. You know, sorry you guys, but, you know, I have to protect my assets. I say the same thing about condo developments. I just tell them, those on-site agents they will say they're there to represent you. And they will say, I don't work for the developer. Well, they don't, because they're contracted with a different company and the developer pays the company. It's a loophole, folks. They all work for the developer and they all get a cut out of the commissions on that building. And they're going to get more commission out of your client. And all those condo developments will have an on-site registration policy. So if you get a client going and you know they're looking for new construction, maybe you want to spend some time and put their name on all these registrations you know going on out there. And educate them that they need to tell them that you're that. And I've actually told my clients, I said, here's my card. I don't even care if you decide I'm going to be your agent later or not. I'm just at a buyer consultation. I'll just say, but you know what? Use my card in the meantime because you've got to identify an agent. Otherwise, you have no representation because agents aren't going to want to represent you for a 1% commission. You just gave everything, all their incentive and everything away, and now you're being represented by someone who really works for the builder. Yes?
Could we list with broker remarks that the full commission will only be paid if the agent is with their client?
Yes.
Yes, you can. And that's another thing. Start reading your remarks.
It's often there. You have to be accompanied in the first 2 visits or something.
Yeah. Yeah. If that's all posted, then guess what? Those are the rules, folks. Because the seller just said, here's the rules to get your commission. So when you're looking around and you're looking things for your buyer and you see there's 4 open houses this weekend and you just don't want to bother going out and showing them and they say, oh no, we're happy to go to open houses, I would read the remarks on every single one of those open houses before I let them go.
Eric, what happens to a commission? Let's say it's full percent 6, listing agent takes 3, and the agent didn't show up with the buyer, takes 1. What happens to those 2? Seller doesn't pay period, or seller pays to the listing agent?
That's between the listing agent and the seller.
Okay.
You'll know when you see the final closing statement because it's going to show how much commission each side got. So you'll be able to figure out then if they took 5% or not. But a lot of times it would be the seller's just going to be happy and say, thank you, and save it. But if it's a builder, it's still going to have 6% in there. It's just going to show 1%. Okay?
So
yeah.
You're saying about the seller saying that, listing agent saying that their buyer needs to be, the agent needs to be with their buyer. So if your buyers go out and look at, whatever, 3, 4 open houses, and they just waltz in and waltz out, how do they know if you come in to make an offer that you weren't there? Just
sign in.
Your card, sign in.
Well, what if that?
Really
but what if at the open house?
My buyers at my open houses, people who come in sign in.
It depends. Some open houses, they might say, we just want your name. That's all they say. They might just say, put your name, just want to know that you're here. You don't have to put address or anything just because they're monitoring.
What if they're not taking names or anything like that?
Well, then it's kind of hard.
Then what's the point? How are you going to check?
It's like, if they don't have any registration, how do they know that Joe and Mary were the Joe and Mary on the contract? Yeah.
Did I hear it correctly that let's say you do an open house, you're not the listing agent, right, for somebody, and that's, I think you asked that question, right? And then somebody comes in, supposedly they have an agent, but they still want you to write a contract, and it's okay?
Yes, it's okay.
So the buyer agency agreement with the other agent doesn't mean anything?
Well, first of all, you're the agent that was sitting at the open house and they said, I would like you to write an offer. Well, your relationship is only with that buyer. You have no relationship or anything to do with the buyer agency agreement between them and that other agent. And you all got to realize on a buyer agency, all they have to do is send you an email and say, hey, I want to break our buyer agency. I no longer want to work with you. And it's over. It's done.
So really, it's not even that important.
All buyer agency for really, you guys, is to just get a mindset with your buyer. They're making a commitment with you as well as you're making a commitment to them, to give them all this time and effort. And it's also a mindset for them to realize they've made a commitment to you. But don't get lazy thinking now you got a buyer. What the real commitment is with your buyer is communication, clear, quick, and having answers for them and being available for them. You're establishing a really strong relationship. You know? I mean, if you lose a buyer, it's sad, but you lost the buyer because you didn't get an established relationship like you thought.
This is also, I'm looking at the buyer agency. So in bullet number 2, it says exclusive. You sign it up as exclusive. You leave the area blank, which means that all areas are covered. And then bullet number 5 says the agreement will expire. But then, does it not mean that the exclusive and non-exclusive, we keep going back and forth? So one clause, I don't remember where, it said that if the buyer acquires with or without your assistance, using somebody, actually paragraph 8A, it says exclusive. If the parties agree to an exclusive relationship in paragraph 2 above, and if the buyer shall, during the course of the agreement, purchase a property located in the area, in this case we've left the area blank, so which is like a wild card, all the areas. 1 second. Then the buyer shall pay the firm compensation provided for herein if the buyer shall, within 6 months after the expiration of the termination of this agreement, purchase a property located in the area that was first brought to the attention of the buyer by the efforts of the firm or through the information secured directly or indirectly from or through the firm, then the buyer shall pay the firm. So it's kind of like, verbiage confuses the heck out of me.
No, it doesn't confuse. What if they went to the open house? What your effort was? How did you secure that property for them?
So if I just gave them a call that morning and said, hey, there's an open house, here you go, and then they chose to defect and then go with another agent, then I'm just secure? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm asking how.
All I'm saying is it's a lot of fancy language, you guys, to establish that you're making a commitment to each other, but you only can enforce a contract if you sue.
And you don't want to sue.
Yeah.
And you know what is the area?
Hold on. Yeah.
Can the agents of new developments actually get their name, and just because they didn't check the box, they have an agent and claim the commission?
What? On what? The purchase sale?
New developments. Can they actually claim the commission if the buyer came and bought it? Like with me, say I'm his agent and he went to there and he didn't tell them he was an agent?
Yeah. If you had a buyer, went to a development, didn't tell them you were their agent,
came back, but with me.
but came back and asked you now to write it up, well, if their policy says they had to register your name and your client didn't, then they will only give you 1% and they will not pay you 3%. And there's nothing we can do about it because that is their policy.
There is actually such things out there.
Yep.
No, almost all major developers have this policy.
This is not an exception, this is common.
It's very common because guess what? Are you going to be an agent sitting 40 hours a week at a development if you were not getting some way of support to get compensation? That developer wants you to sell those houses, and that developer is going to say to you, the only reason they're buying this house today is my guy at the desk spent 45 minutes answering all their questions, showing them all the colors, figuring everything they want, and now you're coming in writing the contract and saying you're the reason they're buying? No. The reason they're buying is because of our agent. Well, as a new agent, you guys, you should be with your client all the time. if you've been in the business a number of years and you're juggling a lot of clients, but you've also learned how to establish really strong relationships, then maybe it's okay to let them go out and do an open house because you know they trust that you're the one they're going to work with, and they know to put their name on a registration.
So this happens a lot more in newer houses. Wow.
It's all new developments that do this registration, you guys. It's rare. It's rare a resale is going to have one of those weird policies in their agent remarks, but some do. Some do. Okay? So,
We're done.
that's it. It's 3:04.
On form 41.
Thank you.
Write the script in the area. Don't leave it blank. Write Washington State. It's most
Now it's making more
on the
sense,
license,
Eric,
on
because
the
yesterday
ask, you said,
my
I'm licensed in
buyer
Washington
actually
State.
went to
Write business in
new
Washington
development.
State.
And the
You can stop the streaming.
Oh, yeah.
okay.
Make sense?
Oh, streaming. I got to go back over to
OBS.
OBS.
The agent on the side was keep talking,
It
and
says
then giving
launch.
false information. I was like, what's going on, you know? But
Because
lucky now
next time when we
everything's
launch, it's going to ask you to update because they had a hot fix and I did not want to.
Oh, so I'm off?
You can go to OBS one more time.
Yeah, I don't think I'm signed off.
There should be a button says stop streaming. Launch anyway. Yeah. It's already running. Yeah. Let's do launch anyway because it's running here. That's why.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So now, yeah, you're good. Yeah, you can update now. Is it touch?
No.
Okay. Yeah, you can do
How
yes.
do you know? I mean, and then he could say
It's
that.
updated.
Here's what he could say.
All right, and then when it's all done,
Yeah, about 2 minutes. Just give it 2
then
minutes.
this one, I want to say